Hello everyone, welcome to Love and a Little Magic, the podcast about life magically. I'm Fairly Theta. I see so much on social media about manifestation and creating the life that you want. And, I think we've talked about it before. I am not the biggest fan, so to speak, of like the law of attraction secret style mentality. I don't know, maybe I'm overcomplicating things for myself, but it definitely feels like there's so much more to it than that. And back in, maybe it was the beginning of January, it already feels like years ago, let's be honest, it already feels like years ago, where I was talking about discipline as this love language of the universe, really putting in time and attention and energy to grow into what it is that we want. It's not as necessarily simple, I don't think it's as necessarily simple, as just wishing for the thing and then it arrives. I've heard it described like, well, when you place an order with a company, you trust that it's going to show up. And it's like, sure, but you also exchanged money. You provided payment, you provided all of your information and trusted them with that personal identifying information. Like, there was an exchange that happened. That discipline is the exchange for what it is that you want to get back out of the universe in this manifestation journey. It's just how I see it, I guess. But there's a lot we do that I think does create the life that we want. And I say that in air quotes, want, because it's not really the life that we want at all. It's the life that we think that we deserve, or the life that we think that we are capable of having. I do this thing all the time. And like, we're talking, I could go into a grocery store and I start to do this thing where I imagine these conversations that people are having about me. On the surface, when I say it out loud, this sounds absolutely insane. Like, this sounds like crazy person talk. But it's so natural to imagine all of the ways that people are doubting you, all of the ways that people are talking down to you, questioning your decisions, and, making light of things that are important to you. Let's be real, it's called anxiety, right? Like, we've all had these conversations with ourselves where we imagine what other people are saying. I think the most classic example is probably like when you break up with someone and then you're imagining all of the terrible things that they're telling other people about you. And the thing is, they might not be. You don't know that that's for sure what's going on. In fact, it's quite unlikely that those are the things that are being said. A stranger in the grocery store has no investment in your life whatsoever. And to be perfectly honest, if they are having a weird conversation about you, or they're so deeply offended by something about your person that they actually mention it to somebody else later, that's their problem. Like, that's their crazy person dilemma. But there is a very real problem to talk about here. And that's because the voices having those conversations are yours. All of this negative self-talk is very real, and it's your own internal voice doubting the decisions you make, doubting the way that you go about trying to achieve the life that you want, second guessing all of your decisions and, values. And that's absolutely a very real thing that goes into creating these situations that we find ourselves in. I'm not saying that every bad thing that happens to us or that every challenging situation arises because we've had this negative self-talk, but it doesn't help. Everyone has a reason why you shouldn't follow your heart. Everyone will find a reason to dissuade you from making the choices that you feel you need to make for yourself. But the biggest voice that's going to speak against you, the loudest voice, is going to be the one in your head. Your friends and family, ultimately, if they are true friends, if they love you as family, they're going to want the best for you, obviously. And that might come with a certain amount of, structure, of like template. This is how things are done. That doesn't mean that it's because they disapprove of the way that you do things. It's simply that they're concerned that the way that you've chosen to do things might not work out for you because they don't know that way, right? If this sounds oddly specific, it's because this is definitely a situation that I'm finding myself in more and more with each passing day. We've talked about the circumstances of my life before on this podcast. And, as I get closer to making some of these giant leaps, I hear that voice in my head a lot, under the guise of other people. I hear my mother, I hear my father, I hear, my friends. And the thing is that I'm not really hearing them. I'm hearing a version of them that I've internalized. I'm hearing their lives kind of reflected at me, and it's all projection. We do so much projecting. Certainly, I understand that the way that my parents, the way that, my family has done things aren't the way that I do things. And I don't think they should be. I do think that with each passing generation, we change, we grow, we heal traumas that guided them, and we kind of take on our own that guide us. So, of course, the way that I do things isn't going to be the way that they were done 30, 40, 190 years ago. But that doesn't mean that they're wrong. And at the end of the day, the only person that's setting me up for failure is myself. I do a lot of this envisioning of conversations that happen. Conversations that I invent. And I tell myself, well, this is why I can't discuss these things with people. This is why I can't be honest or authentic with the people around me. Because if they knew, they wouldn't approve, and then that energy is brought into my space and affects my outcome. And I'll work myself into circles like this without ever stopping to come back to a point where I understand that the energy's already there. The energy has already been brought into my space because I'm the one who brought it. It's totally invented by me. If I'm worried about other people's negative perceptions, well, it's because I've already had that perception and I'm battling it away. So if I'm trying to manifest this dream life for myself, it certainly seems that the first step is to conquer this internal voice, right? I certainly thought that I grew up quite a rebel. We talked a little bit about that last week as far as I was concerned, shaving half my head and wearing a whole lot of black made me a very edgy person. But the bottom line was that I still fell in line every step of the way. I never really challenged the way things were supposed to be done. And that's because I assumed that the way things were done was the way they were supposed to be done, the way that others expected them to be done by me. And of course now I can look at it from an outside perspective and just go like, sure, but who decided that? And like, how's that working out for everybody? You know? I could rail against the system for quite a while, and in fact some of you have reached out to me with some very interesting conversations that we've had about exactly this topic. But you know, it's kind of beside the point, in that things are done the way that they're done until they're not, until they're done differently. And there's no law that says, well, behaviorally, there's no law that says that you can't do them differently. We have this herd mentality in a lot of ways. And, you know, even if that word is offensive to some, you know, it's absolutely true. I'm sorry. There's no way around it. There's a lot of herd mentality, hive mind mentality of just like acceptability. We don't want to put ourselves in a position where we feel unacceptable. And most rebellion that we see, that we witness, is totally superficial. You know, dressing in lingerie over your clothing is not really a rebellion. It doesn't change anything. It just makes people look at you funny. You know, it's things like that are not really rebellious. The models that we look to for rebellion are what? Doing it online with terms of service perfectly, you know, unviolated. And it's a little bit funny to think that there is one way to do something, and really it's because we're afraid of being perceived as completely unacceptable. And the reason that we're afraid of that is because we feel that perhaps it is unacceptable. Who are we to be able to achieve this level of difference? Who are we to be able to have what we want? Why should I expect to live a totally different life with a totally different set of expectations and circumstances than everyone who came before me? Or at least a vast majority of the people that I know. And that's the reason why we engage in this constant circular conversation of negative self-talk. This is the biggest form of self-sabotage, getting back to that topic, that I personally engage in, and I feel that a lot of others do as well. Outside of comfort seeking, outside of, you know, being just afraid to lose what is had, the next biggest fear that I see all the time is this fear of being unacceptable. And who cares? Really, right? If you are having these debates with yourself, if you are really feeling called to do something differently, to change the pattern, to heal maybe generations worth of trauma that has led to a point, it's worth investigating. It's because you're not satisfied with what you have and where you are. And that's worth getting to the bottom of. Why is that dissatisfaction there? What are you meant to be achieving that this is keeping you from? Even if it's an exploration, you know, even if it's just investigating what else is out there, how else to do. It feels like it's an important thing to find out. And the only way to do that is to stop the self-talk, to stop the talking down, to yourself, even if it's under the guise of other people. Who cares what your ex is saying about you? If that conversation is playing over and over in your head, perhaps it's because you do feel a little bit badly about things that you did in that relationship, and all you can do now is change it going forward. Don't go into your next relationship as the person that you are on that end of the conversation. The next time you're having this conversation with yourself, whether it's, like I said, your ex or just a stranger at the supermarket, ask yourself why. What is it that's making you so uncomfortable in that circumstance? It actually could just be a projection of your discomfort with the other. Maybe it's not really about that person being uncomfortable around you so much as you're uncomfortable around that person. And that's a trigger that needs to be investigated. I clearly believe that discomfort is a massive tool for growth. So sit with why, sit with how, and get to the bottom of it so that it stops happening and you are able to trust that this is something for you, that you do deserve these nice things, this great way of living, this better life that you're trying to achieve for yourself. Because that's the only way you're going to get it. No one's going to hand it to you. It comes through work. And this is the work that it comes through. There's a lot of self-exploration that needs to happen in order to get to the other side, whatever that other side looks like for you, whether it's a better job or living in a different place or, a better group of friends or whatever it is. You need to feel like you deserve it first. And clearly, if you're having these conversations with yourself, you don't. And that's not to say that there aren't real uncomfortable conversations that you will have. If you really confidently step into this place of embodying the person that you want to be, the life that you want to have, you're going to come up against people who don't think that it's the right thing for you. And that's because it's not the right thing for them. We tend to project a lot of trauma onto others, and we inherit a lot of our doubt from other people. Your friends and family, if they really do come to you with concerns, you need to remember that those are concerns they have for you because they love you, because they want the best for you, and their idea of the best is not engaging in this trauma. They probably come to this with their own set of doubts and worries and fears. And it's all because their learned experience is that life doesn't work that way. And they don't want you to be disappointed. They don't want you to be hurt. They don't want you to feel like you don't deserve, because their experience is that this is not how you achieve what you want. Perhaps their experience is that what you want is wholly unrealistic. They're not trying to pop your bubble, to kill your dreams. They're trying to protect you. But all they're doing is passing on that trauma, and it's not yours to begin with. So when you're having these conversations, especially in your head, ask yourself where this came from. It might not even be yours to begin with. That is a conversation that could take a very long time, and I could get very deep into, some of my own explorations with that, but I think that's probably for another day and another time. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching if you're tuning in on YouTube. I would love to hear, what some of these circular conversations are that you engage in with yourself. Like I said, I do this all the time, and it's something that I'm really trying to extricate myself from. So if you want to reach out, you can find me on Instagram at fairlytheta. You can find me online at lifemagically.com, or you can work with me directly at thatastrologer.com. I'm all of these places. I'll see you again soon. Bye.